idea about not just a reading group, but action group, a doing group, a making group. We weren't really sure. So that's why we have this very clumsy title of a reading/doing group. And part of what we were thinking about is that, sure, it might follow the format of a sort of doctoral reading group itself. So we meet once a month. And what was really exciting about it, which I think is very exciting, is that it was a hybrid format. So we sometimes went in person, sometimes we met completely online, sometimes we tried these hybrid forms. And really what we tried to do is make this space that we could talk and discuss and come to kind of ideas of what Southern Urbanist practice means. And we really held it in a very loose and kind of open way. And as you can see, if you've had a chance to look at the Miro board, I'll put the link onto the chat now. You can see a really nice summary of what most of the discussions and what forms they took. So the, that's the wrong screen. Yeah, that's the technical. And really, we just wanted to kind of open up the space to chew on this, to think about this, to kind of act as much as we could. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So what today is really about, get back on slides. There you go. So what today is about is, chance, as Katina was saying, was to kind of look back at what we've done, to hear from really amazing people who've been doing this work for much longer than myself and Luke combined, and to kind of open up the space a bit more to discuss what it means to not just theorize about what a Southern context is, but to action those theories, to put them into sort of a practice of sorts. So go to the next thing. The next slide. Oh. Yeah, next one. So what's today, we've broken it apart, and this is mostly to kind of open up, it's okay, losing the catch up, is that because we work in so many time zones, we have people from the US, we have people from sort of the kind of subcontinent. So we have these two sessions as a way to make space for different time zones. We also are obviously recording it so that people can access this in their own time at the same place. And we're going to have two sessions, and each of the speakers will present a very short 10-minute kind of reflection, provocation, discussion. They were completely open to whatever they would like to talk about from their own idea of practice across the cross-cutting themes, which Catalina will briefly speak about inside of Lou's presentation. So we have these two sessions, and we have a short break in between. So feel free to come out of the day. Go to the next slide, Lou. If you could just use the Miro board, which we've set up, I'll put the link into the chat now. But you're welcome to leave comments on there. We've made a few spaces for that. You're also welcome to use the chat function inside of Teams to leave comments or questions. And really, we just want to make this sort of an open-ish day in terms of discourse. It's not supposed to be this big, heavy kind of seminar format. It's more about a reflection and opening up discussion. But we would like to document it. So I'll also be sort of doing bits and pieces for that.
One thing to add is we're also using Menti during the day. So there's Miro and the chat here on Teams and Menti. So whatever you're most comfortable with, and we'll figure out to line everything.
Yeah, Luke, the next slide. Next one, isn't it like a thank you slide?
Oh, I moved that right to the end.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll do it at the end, but just a quick thank you to obviously Urban Lab for providing us with the catering today, for the DPU Bud program for co-hosting with us. Lou and I are part of a group called the Postgrad Urbanists, and they've been amazing in hosting this reading group for the last year. And the Barker School of Architecture, that's given us so many venues and hardware. And today, the Barker School of Sustainable Construction we've been really, really great. So I'm going to hand over to Luna, and then we're going to move into the kind of structured part of today.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So we're also using Menti today. So I will come into my presentation in a minute, but I just wanted to flag this up. At the top of the screen, there's a Menti code, which is 85129633. So take your time, but on your phone or on your second screen, go to menti.com and either scan and enter that code 85129633, or scan the QR code, and that code will keep repeating on the slides you have. I wanted to start us off with a actually, maybe I should start off by introducing myself if you haven't met me for a while. So hi, I'm Lou, and it's been so much fun to be working on this reading and doing with Jono and our lovely community here. I have a background that spans architecture and planning and development, and I'm doing a PhD in geography, looking at the role of informal practice-based networks in producing low-cost housing in London. But for me, I found that a lot of the Southern Urbanist literature is actually really useful for me to integrate practice into the work that I'm doing in terms of actually looking at London from the ground up. I also wanted us to test Menti by doing a little warm-up. So if you're on Menti, some people are already. Here's a little icebreaker question. If Southern urbanism is the answer, then what is your question? So I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to enter this. So it's just a warm-up. Southern urbanism is your answer. What is your? It's the answer. What is your question? And what I'll do in the next bit of my presentation is I'll go over some of the questions that John and I had when we started this reading and doing. First, the motivation for doing this, which then led us to plan sessions where we did. And I'll talk you through those, what we did in each session and what we found. I love this question here. How can I work from a centre that is not the centre? And also, what is one step towards epistemic diversity? Okay, really lovely. Shall we, what makes Southern urbanism different from global urbanism? Okay, some lovely questions here. And also one at the top, how do we research and practice better in today's world? Or how do we use successes from Southern experiences to inform policy planning efforts? Okay, fantastic. This is exactly the kind of stuff that me and John were thinking through. But I promised you I'd tell you our question. So in a sense, when John and I began this, we wrote this little kind of call for comrades document. And it had in big text, when we employ these concepts of Southern urbanism or practice, what are we trying to say and to whom? And more importantly, what are we trying to do? Now that document had a whole bunch of questions in there, but effectively, we were hoping to form a community of people to meet and think and experiment with, and to really try to work out for ourselves what ideas and methodologies contribute a practice from the kind of bottom up, what actual people are able to actually do when, say, working from not the centre, and how best to do so. There's a phrase in that about a more radically contextual attunement, but actually, what do you tune into? How do you tune into? Which aspects of context do you prioritize? What is radical? That's the kind of stuff that we were hoping to explore together. And so we've got this lovely community across Menti and Miro and Slack and our Teams group. And on the Miro board, you've got like a little kind of living history of who's involved and what's put us together. But you can see a lot of commonalities between us in this list here. What I'm now going to do is quickly go over our sessions, and then I'll invite Kathleen to come in and summarize some themes that cut across these sessions. But our first session was a close misreading of Gautam Bhan and Ananya Roy's work on urbanism is and isn't, and how it relates to us, where we took phrases from the texts and we kind of played games like, make up a new word that fills in the blanks, or who said what on their questions or conclusions, or on theory and practice, or just like open reflections on true or false. And then our second session was very kind of embodied walking and talking, second and third sessions, where we were really trying to work out what does Northern or Southern look like from here and now, from who we are and what we get up to, and what we would like to be doing in the future. So really comparing literary propositions from our reading list to our own experiences, and walking around in London, inviting others to form groups of people and walk around wherever they are as well, and to kind of compare reflections on that, on what it looks like from the here and now. Then we had session 4, which was listening to practice, where we were listening to a whole bunch of things that you can kind of see on the top left, and trying to really thinking at the back of our heads how research methodology works in a sense. How do you transcribe context? How do you generate insights from them? What role does disciplinary norms play in the ways that we work? What is at stake here, morally, institutionally, ethically? And what does action mean from this context? So as John summarised it, we really ended up getting into the kind of what consequences the message carries, who the message is for, why we need to understand that message, and the questions of what practice-based messaging looks like, which sets us up for the next session, which was looking at what action might be. And our discussion there ended up becoming about, prioritizing action in a sense, and looking at the context of action with the amount of agency that we have, and especially coming from, I guess, being in between, say, the formal and the informal, or between a kind of mainstream and a kind of outsider perspective. Indigenous languages, the hybridization of practice and not fitting into neat disciplinary backgrounds or boxes. And really understanding the detailed lives of people and the ethical commitment of being present in the moment with all of your values and all of the contradictions that often means, and integrating the widest variety of perspectives, but especially more vulnerable perspectives, knowing how everything is so likely to change and be in a kind of state of dynamic, sometimes conflictual, and always unstable. And then using that confrontation with reality as a way of continually reflecting on action, on praxis. So this is the context, the 5 sessions that kind of set us up for where we are today, what we're hoping to do with all of you together. What I've got here is some of our kind of findings. And in a sense, the way that a lot of these bullet points for me emerged was to go back to those questions that we asked ourselves in that kind of session 0, or in that document that kicked things off, and really set up to try and answer those documents and those questions, and to see the strategies that came out through the readings, through discussing with people. So really working from a location, embedding and immersing ourselves into the here and now, and describing and accepting it as it is and working from there, and then coming up with propositions for action and reality testing through experiments, and then feeding into reflections on the why and the how of practice, of why we do things and how we do them, and not taking that for granted, but really, whether it's research or whether it's a design or something else, really paying attention to this, and then these analyses that aren't starting with a kind of controlled environment of having clear objectives from the start, as much as really being a bit more open to the process, and inviting emergence rather than kind of control. So more speculative, creative, effective, generative. And there's a lot of different ways you can describe this, and it probably maps onto a lot of different ways that Southern urbanism is kind of described as being kind of defined in the fish. Attempting solidarity is creating these self-organizing structures for us to be able to connect with other people and to really test things out and find the support we need to be working in this way. And back to the importance of collaborative, collective knowledge production and evaluation, and rather than it very individual. And for me, there's a kind of bottom line here. It's about common values rather than it being about kind of set objectives in a world that's so changing. Using these common values as guides or as kind of epistemic reference points for decision making. So that's why I think that this kind of maps on as well to our panel discussions on values and on actions. So we've got a list in the document that we sent out of some of these values, and I'm just conscious of time because I want to give Kathleen time to go into the themes as well. So I'll skip over these, but I can come back to them as we,
That's what.
Exactly. Kathleen, would you like to talk us through the themes, and then I can come back and take us to the next bit?
Yeah, well, we haven't rehearsed properly everything what we're gonna say, but I think something that has stood up in terms of the selection of the readings and the activities that the group did, it came across like at least 5 elements or axes that we could see and perhaps is going to be part of the discussion that are coming afterwards. I think there was a lot of discussion in terms of engaging with the ethics of knowledge production. And of course, because of the very nature of the PhD student approach to this reading group and young practitioners, I think the ethics of engagement became central to this discussion. The other element that came across is all the ideas about the vocabularies, right? How can we engage differently in the different ways of knowing, and therefore not only engaging with text as such, but also with practices with the work, and somehow highlighting the ontoepistemological nature of also thinking around Southern practice. And I think the other element that is very important is understanding kind of the tension and the role of theory and how the different strategies that we need to put in practice to actually unlearn the Western canon, which I think part of the discussions were leading into these ideas. And somehow some of the things that we're going to be discussing today are going to be part of expanding that reflection around there. So I think those kind of were some of the elements, as well as having this tension and contradictions in terms of where is the location we are at, right? What is the role of the belly of the British Empire? What does that to us in terms of framing the things we do in terms of scholarship? But also this putting in tension ideas about the global, the metropole, the centrality, and problematizing the idea of the South as a geographical location, but rather as a non-epistemic positionality. And I think the collection of discussions and reflections that we're going to be seeing today are going to be tackling some of those aspects. So if Luna or Jono want to explain how we decided to describe and kind of divide the two sessions we're going to have today.
Thank you, Catalina. I'll go on for a couple of minutes with the themes, and then we'll go into the first session. John, do you want to add anything there?
No, I think what we just to say that also these are kind of cross-cutting themes that we asked our speakers to think about, and we didn't really force anything too particular. We just wanted to kind of give a loose structure to what these sessions could be housed as. But definitely it's about this first one being about how to kind of action these values, possibly. And then the second one is about contextualizing them. But really, I think don't look too deeply into those headings. We just wanted people to bring what their interests were around the sort of broad idea of making Southern urbanist concepts manifest. So I think that's a good way to kind of open it up, but also to not really give it too much structure.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to say anything about the sessions?
That's it.
Okay. And in the chat or on Menti Miro, if you've been part of the sessions with us, and if you have any thoughts, anything we're missing out, please do share. We'd love to hear from you. So John also made a list of 50 things that we discussed, which was sent out to you all in the document, and we put that on Miro and we had a kind of suggestion that later on Miro or throughout the day, we could start to match some of those themes, some of that list of 50 things that we discussed, or more if we missed anything out, they're on post-its, to the themes that Catalina identified, and that would also be a way of kind of putting together and kind of drawing meaning out of it and grouping them into ways. And I was going to suggest adding a further here. That's to really start to think of those themes in relation to mindsets that they require us to have and propositions for action based on values and mindsets. So I'll show you what we have in Miro in one sec. And it's basically, we've got the 50 things on the bottom of the Miro board. So that's the Miro board, and Then we've got over here, these are kind of the raw materials of your. So there's the 50 things which you can copy and duplicate, move around, and the themes. And if you click on that, that'll give you like the little summary of each theme. And to just, you know, go to town with this, thinking about mindsets and ideas, what we could do with these, whether it's something like drafting a manifesto or building a wall, or whether it's something much more specific, like in, you know, maybe something connected to your research, whether or your practice, where there's a particular question that you realize you want to slow down and really think about and really kind of observe and not take something for granted. And so we've also got the finding summaries on there, if that helps you with your kind of brainstorming. But there's this space where you can add comments, and there's this big box down here where you could kind of go back and copy over some of these things and start to group them together in any way that makes sense. So that's what's on there, which we could keep coming back to during and after today's session. And then we've got another interactive question coming up on Menti, which is really what you think of the themes, and if any of them inspire propositions for further reading, doing, or shifts in values and mindset, or something else. But just to kind of open the floor up, any comments or thoughts? If you want to speak up as well, we could unmute and let you speak up even too. But this is 2 minutes, okay? So 2 minutes to just think about. Thank you to the person who says this might emerge through today's session more clearly. And that's fine. This is just to get the ball rolling, given that we've got the 2 panel discussions, and then a kind of big open discussion at the end to really get us thinking. But if anyone's got any questions or anything else, there's someone with a kind of question. So.
Check out. It's not important. As long as you can see the mirror board for the screen.
I've got seconds on the timer. Move on to the next one. So this is a bit premature, but I just wanted to kind of plant the seed in our heads today to really be thinking about what we do with all of our reading and doing. And I'll move on to the next one. That it was, and we might not get there at all, but it's just an idea to really start to think of these themes and the ideas that they bring up for us, and to start to kind of think of them in terms of what's actionable for us within what we currently do, and what's impactful in the way that we might want to define it as a group. So again, we're not going to get here today, but it's just a thought to kind of start to link these together and see where we go with this in really personal ways that are kind of individual to us, but also where we can support each other within this group to do things that are linked to the shared values we have. So that was my bit, and I was then going to open it up to the panel. And it's John, do you want to add anything or anything else?
I'm going to introduce the panelists quickly now, but just to check, some people are struggling to access the links on the chat. Can I just check? Can anyone type or raise your hand, maybe if you're struggling to access the link, so we can think of a way to. It's just the link for the mirror. Okay, it's quite a few minutes. Can someone just tell us, is it the mirror link or the Menti link that you're struggling, or you're not seeing the chat at all?
I'm not seeing the chat at all.
Okay, I suspect that's because you're not part of
Neither
UCL.
am I'm
Yeah.
not seeing it either. Okay,
let's think about this cleverly. But it's not essential right now. I mean, for now, I think the Menti link is up there, so you can use the code.
What I
At the
could
top.
do is, does Miro give us a QR code or something? Because I could go to the share and have that open on the screen.
I think we could put it into the Menti link, but let's figure it out for the lunch break.
Okay.
So for now, thanks. So, and I see there's still some hands up. Is that a question, or are you still saying that you couldn't get the links? We'll yeah, okay, great, thank you. So we'll figure out the links for now.
There is a link here, and if you want to click on that, if you've got Menti open.
Yeah, so you can use the Menti code and then go just backwards to 150 things we discussed. But again, these are not essential. These are just opportunities to kind of drop thoughts and comments.
And you also have the option to just be in the moment with us here, and later if something comes to your mind, then stick it on.
And I'll be doing a sort of live scribing as well through Miro. Great. Can we just check? Is Gautam hiding somewhere in the chat? I think Ola and Bea are both here. Okay, let's hope he emerges. I'm going to give a quick introduction because there are 3 speakers who sent through their bios. So we're going to have Ola Aduku speaking, and Ola has research specialisms in modern architecture, the history of educational architecture in West Africa, and contemporary issues related to social infrastructure provision for minority communities in the West and the South. She is an advocate of equity in all its forms in the workplace, particularly in the architectural profession. She promotes the documentation and recordings of modernist buildings and landscapes through Document Africa, and was president of the African Studies Association. She's currently working on a project titled Aid by Design, examining aid and its relationship in the 21st century, and also the history of health architecture in Africa. I'm going to read Bea and Gautam's just so they can sort of flow through today. Bea is a reader in urbanism at London Metropolitan University. Informal and fragile urban environments. The work employs a collaborative design-based approach to address issues of equity, diversity, and social justice in the co-production of urban space. And Gautam, who I hope is here, is an associate dean at the School of Human Development, as well as the senior lead academic and research at the School of Human Development at the Indian Institute for Human Settlements in Bangalore. He holds a PhD in regional planning from the University of California, Berkeley. At the IIHS, Gautam teaches, researches, and writes on politics of urban poverty and inequality, urban and planning theory, housing and identity, and social practice. He anchors IIHS's work at Center for Excellence with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, as well as a knowledge partner to Urban Movements for Housing Rights. So we're going to hear from our 3 speakers today. I'm not sure if Gautam is joined here. Gautam, are you behind?
Watchy.
Brilliant.